The silence in the room tastes like institutional corruption finally dragged into daylight. Jake suggests looping in the media, sounding more like a civil rights advocate than a neighbor now. And Elena nods with approval. She explains that a housing reporter from the Phoenix Tribune is already investigating Karen's past, and the findings are damning. 3 different HOAs had paid discrimination settlements tied directly to Karen's enforcement practices. She wasn't just a neighborhood bully. She was a repeat civil rights offender with a documented pattern of targeting protected groups. When Tom asks about timing, Alina reveals her perfectly timed legal plan. All complaints will be filed simultaneously next Friday, making it impossible for Karen to craft separate defenses. The media story will break the same morning, ensuring public pressure matches the legal consequences. By that afternoon, the recall petition will circulate, riding the wave of community outrage. Elena predicts Karen is probably burning through lawyers already. But the reality is worse. The federal violations, state licensing breaches, and potential criminal fraud charges will financially destroy her long before the case reaches discovery. She begins assigning roles like a commanding officer preparing for battle. Mrs. Violet will compile enforcement statistics proving discriminatory patterns. Tom will contact veteran organizations about filing supporting briefs. Jake and Sierra will gather online harassment evidence for potential hate crime enhancements. When Mrs. Violet timidly asks what happens if Karen retaliates, Elena smiles with quiet courtroom confidence. Any retaliation is federal witness tampering and obstruction of justice. Karen is trapped in a legal maze with no exits. Elena distributes the business cards of federal housing investigators and civil rights attorneys, like she's dealing the final hand of a long, inevitable game. They're all waiting for the complaint filings to trigger formal criminal investigations. The afternoon light pours across the table, illuminating Elena's war room. Evidence charts, prosecution timelines, witness lists, federal contact sheets. She has built an airtight machine designed to dismantle Karen's entire reign. Next Friday, Elena promises, sealing the last evidence envelope with the quiet finality of a judge. Karen Pesaton will finally learn what federal housing law looks like. Outside, Karen's house sits in perfect suburban peace, unaware that 6 neighbors are constructing her complete legal demolition with military-level precision. But Monday morning brings Karen's nuclear response, discovering Elena's judicial identity and immediately deciding that the best way to defend herself from a federal discrimination case was to attack a sitting judge. Officer Rodriguez arrives looking like a man forced to investigate whether gravity is real. He delivers a formal harassment complaint in which Karen accuses Elena of using her judicial title to intimidate HOA governance simply by existing. She even requests a restraining order against Elena for gardening in a menacing manner. Elena handles the entire interview with calm professionalism, quietly providing proof she had maintained perfect ethical boundaries while Karen had been committing crimes for sport. Rodriguez leaves shaking his head, muttering about people who confuse drama with evidence. On Tuesday, Karen escalates again, launching a social media smear campaign through an anonymous blog called Willowbrook Truth Teller, filled with conspiracy theories accusing Elena of judicial corruption and community terrorism. The writing style is unmistakably Karen's, dramatic, biased, and obsessed with property values. Elena responds with surgical precision, reporting the harassment to the Judicial Conduct Commission, which dismisses Karen's complaint as frivolous retaliation. By evening, I finally break my silence and post a public defense of Elena online. The post goes viral through veteran and housing rights communities, overwhelming Karen's lives with a wave of support. Meanwhile, Karen's grip on her HOA power structure begins to fracture as she hires an elite law firm with $50,000 of community funds, all without permission. The neighborhood erupts in anger. Financial audits are demanded. And for the first time, Karen finds herself publicly cornered. Karen's desperation grows into criminal stupidity. On Thursday, she approaches Tom in his driveway and attempts to bribe him into providing a false statement about her fair enforcement. Tom records the whole conversation, capturing admissions of discriminatory targeting and witness tampering. Elena listens to the audio with the calm focus of a surgeon. This single recording adds multiple federal charges to Karen's already collapsing defense. As the week progresses, Karen's crisis consultant quits, her attorney distances himself, and her husband begins apologizing to neighbors in a panic. Elena documents everything. Karen's every attempt to claw her way out only tightens the legal noose she built for herself. By Saturday, Karen's private investigator contacts us directly, ready to testify that Karen attempted to hire him to fabricate evidence against Elena, a sitting judge. And then comes Karen's most unhinged move yet. A 911 call describing Elena as a dangerous threat to the neighborhood, while Elena is literally watering tomatoes. Rodriguez arrives again, caught between professionalism and disbelief, forced to document Karen's hysterical claims about judicial gardening terrorism. The dispatch center flags Karen's number after 6 false emergency calls in 24 hours. Everything Elena does, jogging, checking her mailbox, even displaying the American flag, is twisted by Karen into delusional accusations of intimidation. The following day, Karen calls an emergency HOA meeting at 6 a.m. Only 3 people show up: Karen, her last loyal board member, and Mrs. Violet, who attends solely to record Karen's statements for federal investigators. Karen spirals into an unhinged rant about Elena destroying property values through legal terrorism, demanding new bylaws targeting anyone she personally dislikes. Her discriminatory statements are caught clearly on audio, becoming some of the strongest evidence yet. By the next morning, Karen's expensive lawyers filed to withdraw from her case entirely, citing irreconcilable differences, a polite way of saying they can't represent someone who keeps generating new crimes daily. Sunday evening, Karen's husband arrives at our door, exhausted, apologetic, and visibly broken. He explains that Karen has been mixing anxiety medication with alcohol, obsessed with property values as their finances collapse, spiraling into paranoia. But even his emotional confession can't excuse years of targeted discrimination. He hands us a flash drive filled with Karen's emails, financial records, and correspondence with other HOAs where she implemented similar discriminatory practices. It becomes the final piece of evidence federal investigators need. On Monday, federal agents execute search warrants at Karen's real estate office, uncovering systematic steering of minority clients and discriminatory fees. Elena organizes 4 full boxes of evidence, enough for a slam-dunk federal prosecution. By Tuesday, Elena makes the decisive call to the Federal Civil Rights Division. The coordinated complaints are ready. Outside, Karen's house is silent. No photography, no tape measures, no patrol walks. The woman who monitored everyone else is about to be monitored by federal law enforcement. On Wednesday evening, more than 300 residents packed the Phoenix Community Center for an emergency city meeting on HOA discrimination, broadcast live on Channel 12 News. Karen arrives late, visibly shaken, accompanied by her last remaining attorney. The session begins with testimony from victims across multiple neighborhoods. Mrs. Violet presents evidence of racial targeting. Tom testifies about veteran harassment. Jake and Sierra share proof of LGBTQ discrimination. And I detailed the financial attacks against me as a disabled Marine. Karen attempts to read a prepared statement blaming everyone else, but the audience rejects her claims instantly. Then, Elena rises. Her presence shifts the entire atmosphere. When she identifies herself publicly as Judge Elena Santos Martinez and explains that she remained ethically neutral for 2 years while documenting every violation as a private citizen, the auditorium goes silent except for the scribbling of reporters. She presents statistical evidence proving Karen targeted protected groups with mathematical impossibility. Her closing statement, defining housing discrimination as a federal crime, not a neighborhood dispute, triggers a standing ovation that lasts minutes. Karen flees the auditorium in humiliation while cameras roll. Federal investigators begin issuing additional warrants before the meeting even ends.
6 months later, justice is complete. Karen pleads guilty to federal housing discrimination, obstruction, and embezzlement. She gets probation, must repay $180,000, loses her real estate license, is banned from all HOA boards for life, and quietly moves out of state. The neighborhood transforms. A new fair HOA board replaces Karen's regime, bogus fines are refunded, and the discriminatory system she built is dismantled. The community garden becomes a symbol of healing, with Mrs. Violet's vegetables, Tom's herbs, Jake and Sierra's rainbow flowers, and Elena's tomatoes. Monthly neighbor events rebuild the unity Karen destroyed, and property values soar. Elena earns statewide recognition, joins Arizona's Housing Rights Court, and becomes a national voice for ethics. My veteran housing rights blog